Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today we have something quite rare and special. My first Venezuelan pony that we're going to try to repair. And it's special because instead of hair it has a squeaky butt. And yes, that is the official collector's name. And apart from all the marks you see, this is what the pony looked like originally as well. So today we're going to try to restore the pony to its former colorful glory. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the line, the company and factory that partnered with Hasbro to produce them, and a new restoration challenge, which we will explore for the first time. I am really excited to show you the progress. So let's announce the beginning of this journey. Let's get started. As usual, the first thing we're going to do is a clean. Now, in this case, this is extra needed because the pony is actually quite sticky. I will tell you why very soon. But I wanted to mention that when I opened the pony, I was very surprised to see that the color inside was very good. Oh well, those oxidation marks you see outside, you couldn't see them inside. So the oxidation, is that a word? Wasn't coming from the inside of the pony. I promise there will be no more squeaking after this section. There will be some squeaking in the results for sure. But let's start with some cleaning. I'm going to be using some hot water and some dish soap. And I know I use too much again. I just love the silky feeling of it. And while we do this, I will tell you about the Venezuelan ponies, the Squeaky Butts, again, official name. And also actually show you a little preview of the book I have been working on for the past, I don't know, entire life years. Alright, so as you might know, Hasbro partnered with lots of companies around the world to create My Little Ponies, to manufacture them directly in those countries instead of having to send them, which would have usually been more expensive. And in Venezuela, the company they partnered with was called Bisanti. Up there in the corner you can see the book I'm working on and the Venezuelan section with all the ponies that Bisanti created, including these Squeaky Butt ponies, which were actually not official. And what I mean by this is that when Bisanti lost the license to produce My Little Pony, they decided to still produce ponies. But they made some changes. They removed the hair and they swapped the tail with a squeaker. They also sold these ponies in little bags that we saw in the picture before. And apparently they were actually used as like little prizes inside piñatas, which makes me think like these piñatas must have been huge. Because the ones we had, they had candy and whistles maybe. Alright, there is a lot more to say about Venezuelan ponies, but we will now talk a little bit about the problem that this pony has, the specific problem that I hadn't encountered before, or at least I hadn't noticed before, and that is plasticizer leakage. We have a channel in the Discord, and that is called The Pony Labs, and some people had mentioned this there, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was, so I did some research. For some reason my brain thought this was called oxidizer leakage, which makes no sense, but look, my video shows up at the top. So that was fun. And then you have the actual good results. For example, oh hey, it's actually called plasticizer leakage. And there were two resources that gave me all the information I was looking for: the My Little Pony trading post, it's a forum, and also the My Little Pony preservation project. So going through the different posts, I could see that yes, if the pony feels sticky, with some areas that seem a bit harder than others, that unfortunately means that a process that cannot really be reverted has started. The plasticizer is leaking from the material, from the vinyl. Now, in terms of stopping this leakage, the best way is to wash the pony with dish soap or any soap. But in the preservation project page, I also read that you can use something called Formula 911, which I couldn't find in the UK, or hydrogen peroxide, which is what we use for retrobrighting. So that's perfect. We can retrobright it, and that should stop the migration of the plasticizer, or at least help it. We might have to do this a few times, repeat the process a few times, but we have to do it anyway to get the color back to the original shade. So let's do that. I tried to zoom in to show you what the leakage can look like. Apart from feeling sticky, you can also see it's like the skin is bit loose. Maybe there were some bubbles, and there were also these darker marks in the back. I think this might be also the ink migrating. I love that it's called migrating, like plasticizer migrates and paint migrates. And I migrate. In this case, what we're going to do, just in case, because I have no experience with Venezuelan ponies, is we're going to use some tempera paint to cover the eyes and the symbols. Tempera, not tempura. Every time I see someone call it tempura, I find it really funny because also I love Japanese food and I'm hungry. But yeah, tempera paint or kids paint because it's very easy to wash off. So we're going to cover those and then apply the hydrogen peroxide and put the pony in the UV light chamber. Oh, and right there I decided to leave one flower uncovered to see what it looks like, just to find out whether Venezuelan ponies can be retrobrighted without danger. The next step is to apply some cream hydrogen peroxide, or you can also use liquid hydrogen peroxide, although that will remove the tempera paint. Then in my case, we're going to put the pony in the UV chamber because I keep it indoors. If you live in a sunny place, you can put the pony outside. You just need to change the cream every like 6-8 hours. When it dries, it stops working basically. So you have to wash it off with water and reapply. A very important warning that I like to give in all my videos: if you do doll restoration, you might be familiar with benzoyl peroxide or acne cream. This is not good for ponies because it bleaches the skin or the plastic. You don't notice it at first, but then after a few weeks, months, you start seeing white spots and the color is gone forever. And there it goes, session 1 of like 20 in the chamber. Now, while we do that, I was thinking, Venezuelan art. I want to make an accessory for this pony, so I found this article by Leonardo Paez and it's called The Study of Venezuelan Rock Art. Now the study is centered more about like how to interpret rock art and how it has been interpreted through time, but it has these beautiful examples of mostly rock paintings, of rock art, rock paintings, cave paintings, you know. And because at this point I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do in terms of an accessory, I thought, well, let's just make a pattern with these because I love them. And you can also download the PNGs from the Patreon site. I'll put them in a like free open post there. And I think it's okay in terms of using this because it has no copyright, although I am very grateful to the sources you will find in the description for turning this into drawings, because I am using those drawings in the end. So what I did was bring all of the designs I could find from roughly the same areas or the same time periods, or actually not the same areas, not the same time periods. This is what the article talks about. You should read it. It's cool. Because as you might imagine, it's quite difficult to get like a historical context for rock art. I wanted to tell you a little story about my own experience with finding rock art kind of in situ, in a place that I went to visit, because I studied anthropology. I will leave it for after we do this next section. But yeah, for now I'll just say I moved all these images, put them into Photoshop, cleaned them up, standardized them, gave them all like the same color, and created a pattern, a repeatable pattern. So if you want to download them, you can use them for like at any, well, not any scale because they're not vectorized, but you can repeat them to create as big a pattern as you need, like for fabric or whatever. So let's finish these and take a look at my new toy. As you know, I love laser machines, but the ones I have are quite mid-range, and I wanted to show you something that is a lot more beginner friendly. This is a little machine, it's called the Algo Laser Pixie, and it's really small and it's really cute, and it already comes with everything you need, like out of the box, like amazing. So yeah, like I was saying, you only need to like plug it in and make sure the laser is like in the correct vertical position for what you want to engrave or cut. Like depends if it's something very thin or something very big, then you move the laser to match that. But that's the only thing you need to worry about. So it's, yeah, I thought I would show it to you because the world is changing. The world is changing, and it's great to have your own little business. And if you're thinking of a creative business, like a maker's business, you have 3D printers and you have laser cutters, and I think a lot of people are doing 3D printing, but laser engraving and cutting is still not as popular. And when I saw this little machine, I thought, oh, this is cool, because we have other technologies that are now like done in like user-friendly ways and for all ages and stuff, but this is the first time I see something like this. Also, it has this little screen where you can draw and then engrave that directly, which I think is a really cool idea. So yeah, once we do that, what we're going to do is put my pattern in and test a few different materials. I'm gonna use some plywood, I want to use some fabric, because I saw in the examples that people do things with fabrics and like dry leaves and things like that. And we're also going to try leather. And now I will tell you my little anecdote about rock art. I keep thinking cave art, rock art, but I mean it tends to be in caves because they're more protected, like the ones we can find are in caves. Which of course makes me think of all the art we have lost because it was made on materials that have degraded or painted on surfaces that have been rained on, and you know, we know so little, and we know so little about these particular paintings too, the ones we're going to engrave now. Anyway, I was studying anthropology, like I mentioned, and was on holidays in the north of Argentina. And I had read that one of my professors had found some paintings nearby this place where we were staying. And I didn't really know where this was. There was no GPS, there were no there weren't cell phones, but they weren't very advanced. Oh my god, there is a truck making noise outside. And so we hitchhiked to the place where we thought there might be, and we followed some trucks, and we walked for, I think it was something like 8 kilometers each way. The hitchhiking part was also interesting because I think we managed to get a bus to get there, but to go back, we had to ask some people if they could bring us, and they put us in the back of a truck, and there was a dog house, and the whole trip I was thinking we're gonna get crushed by this gigantic dog house. But anyway, the story is not about that. It's a very silly story. We did find this place after hours and hours of walking. It was like an outcrop, and instead of the famous paintings that the professor had discovered, and this had been like 30 years ago, it had completely changed like the direction of northern Argentina's archaeology. Well, there were no paintings because people had stolen the rock with tools, I imagine. They just like chopped the pieces and took the paintings away. So there was nothing left. The surroundings were still incredible, and I think it was quite important for me as a student then to be able to see those places and imagine what it would have been to live somewhere like that with all the mountains. I'll add some pictures here so you get an idea. These are pictures I got from the internet because our camera was also stolen during that trip. So yeah, lots of missing things. And in archaeology, losing the context of an artifact, or in this case like the paintings, is such a sad thing, because once some object or art or whatever is removed from the original place, you don't know what it means anymore. I haven't talked about the video in a while, so what we're doing here is I'm going to repaint some of the damage in the symbols. I don't want to paint over them. I just want it to look a little closer to the original. And if, for example, some of the petals are missing, then your eye gets drawn to it. So it's just going to be a repair. And as you can see, these Venezuelan ponies, they were printed using stencils. So the detail is, I think, not as precise as some of the other ponies, which means I have a little more room for mistakes. And then I'm going to also repair the eye, which was unfortunately damaged slightly by the UV process. I guess if you come across a pony as damaged as this in terms of the skin, then you need to make a choice. You either repair the skin or you try to keep the eyes and the symbols intact. And after this, we're going to go back briefly to the accessories. I have been wanting to do pony accessories for a while. As you can see, especially in my last video, the shoes, I haven't been very successful. And I thought a lot about what kind of accessories we could do for this pony. I don't want to cover the skin because there's nothing wrong with having marks on the skin. So I went for something quite simple that just celebrates some of the Venezuelan history. And in this case, like I said, the symbols we're going to be engraving are from what is considered the pre-colonial period, found north of the Orinoco River. Now, since we were talking about context, an interesting thing from that article I will link below is that at first the people that registered these drawings were priests, explorers, naturalists, and usually what they did was just copy the design, but they didn't write down anything about the surrounding area, and they always tried to compare the symbols to things they knew. For example, oh, this looks like a snake, or this looks like a tree. But, and this has happened across anthropology all around the world, there was very little interest in finding out what the indigenous communities or the farmer communities thought about this same art. Luckily, now there is a lot more emphasis on including like the subject of a study in the study itself. And in this case, Venezuelan ethnographers are working more with local communities. In terms of these symbols specifically, Some of them apparently might be something like 4,000 years old. So by the time the Spanish arrived for the Conquista, for example, these were already kind of lost, well, not knowledge, but I mean, maybe a lost culture of some sort. Now, why did I choose these symbols specifically? Apart from the fact that they are really pretty and that I wanted something Venezuelan. Also, there is a connection to the wider South America, because we're talking about very, very old art at a time where populations were still, well, they still are to this day, but they were migrating, inhabiting new places. This was one of my special interests when I was studying the peopling of the Americas. The main theory for a long time was something called Clovis first, because there is a culture in North America called Clovis where you can see some arrivals at around 13,000 years ago, with the, you know, the ice bridge that connected Asia and America. But in South America, and I promise I'm almost done with this, in South America, we always believed it had been much earlier, the peopling of the Americas, I mean. And actually some new discoverings are showing that we might have not been wrong, because there were people in Chile and the Amazonia as early as 15,000 years ago. Anyway, let's finish the eyes and take a look at the accessories. We're going to do something very simple, and I will tell you now that I struggled a lot with this because I thought, why did I feel the need to create accessories? And I think one of the reasons was this piece of leather I should show you. It looks so nice, and these are also scraps I have had for a while that I really wanted to use because I'm trying to recycle all the materials I can. So I engraved a second set of designs. I also cut that little first test I had done into a circle because I thought it could be a nice base for the pony, and I painted it black. It would have looked much better if I had painted the surface, like the lighter part, instead of the whole thing, but when I realized it was already too late, so yeah, just so we don't have to throw it away, it's black now. And then for the leather, I went through a few different ideas. Nothing really seemed to make sense, but I really wanted to do this original thought I had about a little cape. So I cut the shape kind of based on the body of the pony and inspired on this little corner here, which seemed to work quite well. And as you will see soon, I also tied a little string to the leg of the pony. Now, the string represents more contemporary Venezuelan Aboriginal societies, which tend to dress quite lightly, and the leather represents the older ones that are linked to the wider South American context. And both of them are a metaphor for how temporary art can be, or how a lot of our history was lost because we drew it on materials that have faded. And the reason for a cape, maybe, I think, what I feel is that after all this treatment, the pony, well, it has stopped with the plasticizer leakage, so that is cured. But I feel the skin looks very vulnerable, so I don't know, I felt like I wanted to give it a little more protection. This is also all reversible and non-invasive, so at least it can be removed quite easily. Now for the construction itself, I just made some holes. It was quite difficult to do, surprisingly, and I wanted to use some of this leather string to tie the cape, but I had some trouble making it pass through the hole, so I instead used some jewelry wire. It's very flexible, very easy to handle, and yeah, it's not historically accurate, but laser engraving is also not very historically accurate. Let's say that the jewelry wire represents tendons and the laser engraving was done by burning. And if you're still here listening to this, thank you. So let's finish the cape. Let's tie the little string as the sun sets on my window, and yeah, let's take a look at the results. So here is our little Venezuelan Squeaky Butt before, a bit more greenish and with some rust marks. And here is the after. Let's do a little walk with the cape first, and then I will show you the inside. I forgot to put the squeaker back in, but I have it here right next to me. The camera was down and I had to hurry. So the color I think is much better. There are still obviously those darker marks, but it's no longer leaking plasticizer, which is a great thing. I think we have also stopped the process, so hopefully there won't be any more issues. Although actually I'm not sure if it was stopped or delayed, but it is fine at the moment, not sticky at all. Now let's take a look at the pony without the cape, so you can really see where the pigment has moved and where the marks still remain. I think we could have left this pony in the chamber a little longer, but then again, more danger to the symbols, so I think for the moment it's a happier pony. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the process, and I will see you very soon for the next one. A special thank you to the patrons who support the channel. Have a great week. Bye bye.